Germs and Germs. Welcome to the Tim Moen Show. See that little comedy thing I just did there? Listen, I've had a bit of a break, but there's good reason. I'm trying to figure out how to rebrand or redirect the show, make it interesting for you, make it interesting for me. I can just rant to the mic solo. And so at the Christmas party, my staff Christmas party this year, I had a drunken conversation with another drunken firefighter, and we decided to be comedy pals. We're going to be comedy pals. We're going to challenge each other to do an open mic. We're going to set a date. We're going to do an open mic. And I said, hey, why don't you come on my show, be a co-host, get used to talking in front of a mic, and it'll help me out. So let me know how you guys feel about this. But please welcome to the Tim Moen Show, young Jared. Jared, welcome.
Well, thanks. My favorite DJ Freedom himself.
The DJ Freedom, I like that. I've been looking for a DJ handle for years, and these guys came up with it in a matter of minutes. But yeah,
we'll see how it goes.
Listen, have you looked at open comedy mics yet?
I haven't really been looking at the schedule. No, I mean I know there's places that do it, so I've just been kind of working up the gall to.
Well, we got to set a date. That's the only way to do it. You know that, right?
Yeah, I know. I'll have to look at the schedule. I'll have to actually set something up because I know the one in West Ed does open mics, but I'm not sure how often.
Because I'm a procrastinator, Jared. I don't do anything until the last minute. And there's a good reason for that. If you do wait till the last minute for everything, it only takes you a minute to do stuff. But I look at comedy the same way. I'm not going to start writing material until I actually have a date. So we got to set it up. We're going to let you guys know what that date is. You can come out and support your boy Jared here at our first open mic, giving it the old college try. I mean, if Joe Rogan, these guys can do it, why can't we?
Hey, if Shane Gillis can be a stand-up, everybody can be a stand-up. That's as far as I'm convinced.
50 isn't too late to start.
I don't think it's ever too late to start.
All right, so we're going to go through current events and break them down for you. And I have no idea what young Jared's political leanings are, what his philosophy in life is. Tell us a little bit about yourself, young Jared. You don't have to tell us anything about your political leanings, but other than being a young, strapping firefighter, what is it about you?
I don't know. I always played sports, and I wouldn't be a firefighter if I didn't always try to be the class clown. I'm pretty sure that's a fact. So
I mean, firefighters are guys that got C's in school, right?
Oh yeah, C's got
officer guys that got D's in school.
D's got diplomas and C's got degrees. That's something I always strove to succeed with. I mean, I grew up in a pretty successful family where everybody is far more. I wouldn't say far more intelligent. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a black sheep. I'm in a family of engineers and nurse practitioners. I guess I kind of fell a little bit short, but hey, I got a good career too, and I get to work out and sleep on shift. So, I mean, other than that, grew up in the country with a bunch of hillbillies and rednecks. So that, without getting into my political beliefs too quickly, that should pretty much sum it up for you.
The political divide is rural and urban more than anything. So I'm sure you will resonate with our audience here. All right, let's look at breaking news. This is just out. Rebel Media is breaking this. I'm going to just put this up on the screen. We'll go through this. Hear what young Jared has to say about it.
There's lots going on. Check it out.
All right. Federal court rules use of Emergencies Act is unconstitutional. I have concluded that the decision to issue the proclamation does not bear the hallmark of reasonableness, justification, transparency, and intelligibility, and was not justified in relation to the relevant factual and legal constraints that required to be taken into consideration, wrote Justice Richard Mosley. The counterterrorism law used by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government to arrest leaders of the Freedom Convoy and search and seize property and persons involved in the anti-mandate demonstration, which arrived in Ottawa on January 28, 2022, was deemed unconstitutional by a judge. In his ruling, federal court justice Richard Mosley wrote, "In my view, there can only be one reasonable interpretation of EA sections 3 and 17 and paragraph 2C of the CSIS Act. And the applicants have established that the legal constraints on the discretion of the GIC to declare a public order emergency were not satisfied." So section 2B of the charter was infringed, and section 8 of the charter was infringed, according to this judge. The news of the ruling was posted to X, formerly known as Twitter, Christine Van Gain, litigation director at the Canadian Constitution Foundation, one of several organizations which challenged the Trudeau government's use of the never-before-used law against peaceful demonstrations. So there you go. Justin Trudeau in federal court, and the government was ruled unconstitutional. What do you feel about that? Are you?
I mean, I think if you're going to use the Emergencies Act situation, that there's a lot of other situations, like current ongoings and rioting and protesting, that I think you also have to use the same act. If you're going to use it for one, you got to use it for everybody. And just because it's one group versus another group doesn't mean that it's not.
Are you saying that honking doesn't rise to the level of an emergency?
Yeah, no, I struggle to believe that honking was really worth.
But it disturbs sleep.
That's true. That's true. I mean, I do enjoy sleeping at the opportunity. It's yeah, no, I don't agree with the Emergencies Act of this situation. I mean, there's very few. There's a first world democratic country that I think you should be able to take away just for something.
Well, it was originally called the War Measures Act, right? And the intent behind it was to be able to infringe on your normal rights in wartime. You might be able to make an argument for that. I mean, as a libertarian, I would argue even against that. If you're fighting a war, it's to protect individual rights, and yet you go and infringe on individual rights. It seems like, why are you fighting the war? Are you on the side of the enemy or not? But this certainly is a good precedent. It'll, may mean that governments in the future will have to think twice about bringing down that hammer and taking away freedom. I mean, they seized bank accounts. They did all sorts of nasty things to Canadian people, and that's been kind of been the theme of government. Well, it's been the theme of government since the dawn of government, was to use emergencies to justify infringing on liberties. But it certainly has ramped up a great deal over the last 3 or 4 years with the pandemic and whatnot.
Well, I mean, I see that Emergencies Act kind of is like a lockdown. Like at the mall, there's a shooting at the mall, and they go into lockdown. Your right as a voting citizen is to walk around freely, shop if you wish. And then when there is something that's endangering your safety, your public safety, those rights are taken away to maintain overall peace and order. And that's how I see the Emergencies Act at a much larger scale.
Huh.
And I think it's
young Jared pushing back. I like it. Finding a place to disagree.
I just think
it's a trial for co-hosts, right?
There's things that absurd, and you can just take not necessarily peaceful protest, but overall pretty peaceful protest that and justify that to complete. You're taking away what is freedom in the sense of
right. Here's a little back to your back. Mall is private property, and so they can impose whatever rules they want. Canada is not anyone's property. It's certainly not the government's property. They didn't do anything to earn that, right? I mean, planting a flag and saying, "Hey, from sea to sea, this is ours." Well, what makes it yours? That's not how you get to own property. So they don't have it right now. And this was the federal government, right? This protest was taking place in a city, and they invoked a national act to deal with what was happening in the city. Wouldn't it have been better for Ottawa to deal with it internally? Certainly, it would have been an easier case to make for Ottawa to use some emergency bylaw to deal with protesters. But in reality, what they should have done is what they should do to deal with this kind of thing is just privatize the city and keep riffraff off the streets, if that's how you want to do it. But they don't do that. Okay, let's keep moving on here. Let's keep rolling. All right. This is something interesting that came up recently. They're trying to introduce a universal basic income in Canada. Do you know that, guys? Let me share this with you. How do I share this? Oh, present. No. Here we go. Share screen. All right. So this is what they're proposing. This is bills S233 and C223. which is the next step for an unconditional basic income. So what they're doing with this bill is actually setting a framework. They're not actually implementing a UBI here, but they're setting up a framework to make it possible to bring in a UBI. Whereas every person should have access to a livable basic income, the minister must develop a national framework for the implementation of a guaranteed livable basic income program throughout Canada. On December 16th, 2021, Senator Kim Pate and Member of Parliament Leah Gazan introduced bills S233 and C223, which, if passed, would establish the first national framework for an unconditional guaranteed livable basic income for all persons over 17 across Canada. Both bills include the same title and text and mark the first ever coordinated effort from within the House of Commons and the Senate for basic income. They're coordinating, they're conspiring, putting on my tinfoil hat. Use the tools below to sign and share the petition. Okay, so this is a UBI website here bragging and promoting this, trying to push this UBI idea forward. Young Jared, what are your thoughts on a universal basic income?
Well, many people tried to push communism. I mean, as far as I'm convinced, universal basic income is like the building blocks of a communist society, and that that's never not worked out for anybody. Everybody's ever tried it has had limited to no issues or downfall.
Yeah, that seems to have that track record, if I recall. Well, look, I mean, yes, the justifications for communism are all, look, everyone has the right to a livable wage and all the food, shelter, and clothing, the basic necessities of life. How could you possibly argue against this?
I mean, obviously there's people who are worse off than in this country than others, and there's in different places there's less work and less opportunity to provide. I can see some argument there that some people need assistance. I mean, the economy hasn't been great. Job hasn't been great. Maybe people do need a little bit of help. But, like we've been doing that with CERB and COVID.
Oh yeah, and actually, let me pull up the next article here that talks about that very thing.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
If people need help, we're going to help them out. But I just see this as you're taking a lot of tax money for people who do a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. Some of the people who are going to be collecting universal basic income will be just choosing to, right? Like there's ways around employment, ways to collect if you want to hand over. And I think people are going to.
Well, this would be, what I understand, it would be, I think, $1,200 bi-weekly to every Canadian, not just people who need it, but you and I, people who are making a decent living would also get it. And that way everyone has, at least the basic level of support. And the promoters of it will say, look, there are people trapped on margins who can't, for example, they have no incentive to get off welfare, because if they get off welfare, if they get a job that makes, say, half of what they're making on welfare, well, their welfare entitlements are threatened. They might be kicked off of the AISH.
Yeah, so why would you go to work?
Why would you go to work? And so a universal basic income is there regardless of whether you choose to go to work or not. So that's the rationale these people make. Economist Milton Friedman, who's known as a big capitalist free market booster, actually supported something like a UBI back in the day. It was a negative income tax, but what he did, if I recall, is if you're made under a certain level, so let's say it's $20,000 a year, you would be topped up to $20,000. So if you made $2,000, you get $18,000. If you made $10,000, you'd get $10,000. But everyone would be guaranteed $20,000 a year. So his plan was to use this to replace all the other welfare programs. So get rid of all the other welfare programs and just make it a simplified, straight up cash. There's no requirements to receive it, and there's no disincentives to work either, right? It's not like that money is always there if you make under a certain amount. So that was his rationale. But I think he came to regret his promotion of this idea when he realized that, oh, the people that were supporting it in Congress didn't want to eliminate these other welfare programs. They wanted this in addition to all the other welfare programs. So I think he stopped promoting it after that. But look at this. They brought it. Let's see. Hold on. Wait a sec. Here we go. So this was back in October. This is the Toronto Star, very left-leaning program, talking about Canada's considering a guaranteed universal basic income program. Here's what that means. Canada's taking baby steps towards a basic income program meant to broadly address poverty. The push for a basic income program gained more momentum during and after the COVID-19 pandemic as the current Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, CERB, which paid out $2,000 a month to millions of Canadians, raised the possibility of a permanent income program. What did your boy say, people? What did I say?
Baby steps.
What did I say about CERB? It was going to pave the way to what? The universal basic income. And we see it. This is, it's not even a slippery slope. It's a planned, coordinated effort to build and continue until we get, well, as young Jared said, flat out communism. I mean, what's the next step after UBI? Seems like a very small leap from that to communism.
Why?
Well, look, I'm thinking I might invite an economist on to talk about UBI and some of the concerns with it. There are some libertarians who see it as a step in the right direction away from big government welfare programs. I'm not one of those, because any support you give to UBI, which is a leftist program, is going to be in addition to all those welfare programs. Yes, we could eliminate universal health care, if we could eliminate AISH, if we could eliminate all these other welfare programs, then maybe a UBI would be a step in the right direction. It'd be less government spending. It'd be less administration. We could remove all the bureaucracies. It would be simply a check cut. That doesn't seem like it would require a huge bureaucracy to run like all these other welfare programs. So that might be a step in the right direction. But that is never going to happen. That is never what these people will never agree to that. And so it's always going to be in addition to. Now, where are we going to get this money from? Well, of course, it's going to come from the taxpayers, or it's going to come from people who use dollars, right? I mean, they'll print the money up if they have to. And that is the same as taxing. It's just robbing our buying power. And so we could expect the price of everything to go up. Certainly, if you're renting, if you're a slumlord, let's say, and you're renting a low rent apartment to a couple that is now getting an additional $2,400 a month each, wouldn't that incentivize you to maybe raise the rent a little bit? They can certainly afford a higher rent now. That
inflate.
I mean, why wouldn't the price of everything go up? That's seems like basic economics to me. But
I mean, we should start putting in the fine print like a coupon. You can't stack coupons, can't stack welfare programs. You got one coupon for 25% off, then you can't have them.
You know what would really tighten things up and make sure this ran efficiently is central bank digital currency. Because then the government can completely control and make sure everything's on the up and up, right? And,
yeah, just got to jump right to that.
Oh boy. Okay, that's another topic. All right, on the topic of living wages, I wanted to go. I posted a comment and rustled a lot of jimmies on Facebook, and I just wanted to see what young Jared had to say about this. We're going to take a stop from the news for a second. Current events. We're going to talk about current events in my life, people. My life. But I think it goes to this issue that we were just talking about. Let's see here. How do I? Yeah.
Oh, Savage Paramedics.
Savage Paramedics. Okay, so this is what they posted. This is someone I follow on Facebook, a Facebook page. They have a lot of funny EMS memes and different things on here. But here's what they posted this, which is weird. It doesn't seem very savage at all to me. If you want a living wage, get a better job is a fascinating way to spin. I acknowledge that your current job needs to be done, but I think whomever does that job deserves to be in poverty. What do you think about that, Jared?
Personally, I mean, I don't really believe that you can just assume something like that. I mean, if you're complaining about your job and your job not sufficient to sustain your lifestyle, then that does seem like maybe you should be taking steps to eliminate the lack of funds and
Right.
maybe get a second job. Like, if I want an armful of tattoos and I don't have the money, I'm not going to complain that I'm not making enough money. I'm going to go make some
But shouldn't
more.
your employer pay you enough to get an arm full of tattoos? That's part of a living wage.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's exactly what I was looking for when I got into the workforce. Just I want somebody who's going to give me everything I want at my beck and call.
All right, Jared. Well, I'm glad you're on the right side of this issue. Here's what I posted. I said, I deserve a living wage is a fascinating way to spin. It's everyone else's obligation to support me. Now, I got 280 likes on that, but I got a shitload of hate on that as well.
The hate's where the clicks are.
Yeah, that's where all the clicks are. I haven't even read these. Let's read some of these. Tim Moen, and this is just a fascinating way to say, my parents gave me everything and I've never had to work. I won't take work ethic advice from a man who owns more hair care products than his woman. Holy shit, he thinks I have good hair. I mean, that's actually a good comment.
How dare you?
Hey, bud, Eric, so you know, I'm losing my hair. It's thinning out. and I might have more. No, I have like gel. That's it. And shampoo. I mean, is that?
Hey, there's nothing wrong with taking care of your hair. I personally use Moroccan.
I should be using more hair care products. I'll tell you that.
Wrong with good hygiene. I'm telling you.
Oh, someone said amen. Okay, thanks, Shelly.
They got some brownie faces.
Ashley Daly says, Tim Moen, tell us you want slaves back in less words. Kelly Rollins says, fascinating that you'd rather your tax money go to supporting them so CEOs can make bank instead of the company using the more than enough profits to pay that living wage. What did I say about where did I say tax money? I don't know if you notice inflation is happening without minimum wage going up, and minimum wage is the minimum. Okay. A lot of economic illiterates in here. Let's see.
I will say I was actually in recently shock and awe at the lack of money that some part-time jobs are making, and that people are okay making that kind of money. I mean, looking at part-time jobs just in Sherwood Park, you're looking at like $17 an hour. And personally, like when I was in high school, I obviously had access given my location, but I went straight into, got H2S and went straight into the oil patch because I'm not going to get out of money or get out of bed for $30 to go to work when that's not even, well, now it's not even going to get you lunch, right? Like, I just think it's insane that minimum wage is as high as it is and people are still accepting the wages that they are accepting and it's not wanting to take any initiative to make more.
Yeah, that is weird. I mean, well, but they're bitching about employers not paying enough. All right, people, here's what I'll say to you. I will agree to you that employers that don't pay a living wage are bad. Okay, they're bad. They're not nearly as good as employers that pay a living wage. But then you also have to agree that by that same logic, people who don't employ anyone at all are even worse than employers that pay less than a living wage. If you don't employ anyone at all, you're definitely worse than that by logic. And the worst people of all, even worse than that, are people who don't even employ anyone, but bitch about people that do employ other people. They're the worst. So listen, stop being horrible people. Start a business and hire a burger flipper, 6 fucking figures to flip burgers for you, or shut the fuck up. How about that?
Hire an editor.
Yeah. All right. All right. What's next on the agenda here?
Got some good ones.
Oh, okay. Here's an interesting one. Most Canadians who plan to vote Liberal doing so to stop Conservatives from winning. Poll. Most Canadians who plan on voting for the Liberal Party are more motivated to stop the Conservatives from winning the election rather than endorsing the party's vision and leader, according to a new poll released Monday. Meanwhile, the opposite is true for most Conservative supporters. The nonprofit Angus Reid Institute conducted an online survey from January 16th and 17th. While there certainly is a significant amount of distaste for Trudeau among the Canadian public, that does not appear to be the strongest motivating factor for those who intend to vote for the Conservative Party. Really? Instead, 3 in 5 Canadians, 3 in 5 Conservative supporters said that they are more likely to vote because they back Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's and the party's vision rather than wanting to prevent another term of government led by Justin Trudeau. These voters make up a quarter of the electorate overall. That actually is weird to me. That is unusual. So it's not that they hate Trudeau; it's that they love Poilievre. I think
that's what democracy is all about. I mean, in my opinion, if you're voting for a party just to get somebody else out of power, that's kind of not the whole point. You should be voting. You should be presented with enough options that you're voting for somebody who you think can better the country. I don't think we should be voting to get people out of the seats of power.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir there. When I ran in 2015, I ran in this district in Calgary, and it was a big Conservative riding, but they hated their Conservative candidate. They saw him as a red Tory, basically a liberal. And so I got all these hardcore Conservatives supporting me. They loved me. They hated their Conservative guy. But in the end, they all flipped on me and called me at the last minute. I mean, they had the integrity to let me know that they were flipping and voting Conservative because they couldn't risk Justin Trudeau getting in. So they voted, rather than voting for their values, they voted against their worst fear coming true. And I find that's true in our system more than the other one. In first past the post, you generally are voting against your worst fear. So it doesn't surprise me that liberals who are voting are doing so, not because they love Trudeau, but because they can't stand the Conservatives. There's nothing that scares them more than a Conservative. But it does surprise me that Conservatives, the majority of Conservatives, are voting Trudeau rather than voting Pierre Poilievre in, because that has never been my experience with Conservatives. In fact, conservatism is defined by being against the left. There's nothing. I mean, conservatism isn't a coherent ideology or vision. It's just simply has always been anti-left, whatever they're against or whatever they're for, we're against, kind of thing. So it's kind of weird, but I mean, I think Canadians certainly are looking for a break from inflation, and maybe, yes, his vision of less inflation is appealing. It certainly is more appealing than Trudeau.
If we remove the public opinion and don't give anybody a choice who they vote for and just bring back, communism regime, then I think this isn't a problem. There's no downside.
Oh, Jared. Listen, I'll agree with you. There's some real issues with democracy. Back here on this bookshelf somewhere is a book called Democracy, the God That Failed. Yeah, right here. Democracy, the God That Failed. Young Jared, I want you to read that for homework.
Take the power out of the hands of the people.
All right.
Give it to the big guy.
Okay, what's next here? Let's see. Oh, let's go down south. Talk about what's happening down south. Here we go. All right. In Eagle Pass, a tense border standoff between Texas and federal government is reaching a crescendo. So it sounds like they have a huge problem with immigration in Texas. What are your thoughts on
it? Personally, I don't know where to stand on their immigration policies and their immigration laws. I mean, I've never been there to experience it. I don't really have an opinion either way. I think immigrants should be coming in legally and supporting the country just like all the citizens already are. I think that's true. When it comes to a humanitarian issue and refugees, I'd rather stay out of that, I suppose. But I personally like this article because it shows that Texas is they've had enough of kind of being told what to do, and that the government pushed them around and they finally took a stand. And I don't think anybody's done that. Last time that happened was probably in a literal civil war.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think what's happening in Texas right now is Texas put up a bunch of barbed wire, and the Biden administration just took them to court over that, and the Supreme Court ruled in Biden's favor, that border agents could take down the barbed wire, despite what Texas wants. So, yeah, I see this as this is heating up, right? I think we're about to see more more stunts from Abbott. I mean, if you remember, I think it was Texas and Florida maybe too that were busing a lot of these migrants to sanctuary cities like New York, right?
Yes,
And
San Francisco,
New York, which fair play. Yeah, I mean it's a real issue down south there, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there was just a bill introduced into Texas to secede. I don't know how far it got, but I suspect we're going to see more and more bills like that. Certainly, the federal government doesn't seem to be helping Texas out at all in terms of protecting their border. I mean, you'd think the one thing that the federal government is supposed to do is protect the states within its union from invasion, right? And what we see is like kind of a steady stream of migrants coming up now. Yeah,
there's obviously extremist views that there is already an invasion, and I mean, when you look at the videos of people flooding across the border, I mean, obviously it's a video, and you can't say that from the other side of a computer screen. But it's just interesting that they feel so strongly about it that they're going to stand up to the federal government when they know the power the federal government has. There has to be some merit to it, and I know there's other states who back Texas, and when they first kicked them out, like they kicked the federal off of that border crossing in Eagle Park or Eagle Pass or whatever it is. Yeah, so I think just based on like merit alone, Texas has always been kind of a separatist state. I think, well, their history is them being their own Republic of Texas and fighting the Union and all that, right? So I think if anybody was going to do it, it was going to be Texas, and then when other states jump on board, that kind of legitimizes it for me a little bit. And it just shows that it's not necessarily an extremist separatist view. It's the general, like the right wing point of view as a whole. I guess like if Virginia was in on that. I mean, obviously now we're talking about a lot of Confederate states too, but I mean the issues at hand now are
but the
different.
whole issue of immigration is being it's become an issue in the media, let's say over the past month or two, pretty much everywhere. Like in Canada, the Bank of Canada and the government, I think, are blaming immigrants for the price of housing. Right? They're saying, and the of course, the Bank of Canada would shift blame. Given that the Bank of Canada is the primary driver of the housing crisis and the cost of housing, but there's some legitimate concern there about, hey, if the whole third world comes to North America because they're in crisis, can we support it? Given that government, especially, is providing all the infrastructure, and by government I mean all the taxpayers, we're paying for all their benefits and their housing and their assimilation and their shelter and food and everything else. How much can we support? And that's a legitimate question. I, as a libertarian, always have an issue asking the government to do more. My immigration problem, I see it as something that was caused by the government, and asking the government to fix it seems like a recipe for asking for more problems. The government does not have your and my best interests at heart. So imagine that they are capable of doing the right thing, I think is a little bit delusional, but
you can tie that in a little bit too, because I don't have a problem at all with immigration until it's causing the downfall of our monetary structure, because we have too many mouths to feed and not enough people feeding on it. So if there's all these unemployed people collecting their universal income, and that's all coming from taxpayers, then that's a problem.
Right. But isn't the problem the fact that we're being forced to associate with them? They're forcing us into association, right? So there's a person, imagine there's a group of people moving from the United, or crossing the border over at Roxham Road there in Quebec. And we're getting upset about it over here like 2,000 miles away. Why are we getting upset about people moving from point A to point B across that border? Like they're moving 40 miles north. If they were moving 40 miles west or 40 miles south, we wouldn't give a shit. But they're moving 40 miles north. Now, why is it that that movement from there to there, rather than there to here, there is bothering us? And it's bothering us because we're going to have to pay for that.
Mm-hmm.
And whose fault is that? It's the goddamn government's fault, right? They're forcing us into association with these people. I would like to see maybe a decentralization, a little bit of immigration. Alberta should maybe handle its own issues and, not have to, and we shouldn't have to pay, like, just cut off the tax. If we got rid of the income tax, if we got rid of a lot of these forced associations, immigration would be so much of a problem. And I suspect we'd see a lot less third world immigrants. We'd see a lot more welfare migration, right? And it would be more migration on how my ancestors came here. They came here escaping an oppressive communist regime in the Soviet Union, and they didn't come here expecting a handout. There were no handouts to be had. They just saw a land of opportunity. No one was going to stop them from getting what they could work for, right? And so that's right. They lived in a granary, and they planted crops in the ditches because they couldn't afford land. And then eventually they could afford land, and they built up a prosperous family structure here in Canada. But had there been steady stream of handouts, would we have got the same type of people to Canada, or would that have changed the nature of the people that came here? Like, would my grandparents have worked so hard if they were given handouts constantly? Well, these are good questions.
In nature to not.
Of course, we all want a universal basic income, right?
I have to go to work, and you're going to pay me my salary, and you're going to take that salary.
Everybody wants to get paid a universal income, but nobody wants to pay a universal income, and that's the problem. All right.
Trump.
All right, let's go to the next one here. We've got DeSantis dropping out. Ron DeSantis suspends U.S. presidential campaign, endorses fellow Republican rival Trump.
This is it's coming full circle.
It's coming full circle. What do you mean by that?
Well, he was in, and everybody kicked him out, and now kind of the options are between Trump and Sleepy Joe, it seems, at this point, and you're in between a rock and a hard place. But
why do you think DeSantis failed so miserably? Why did his campaign? I mean, he seemed like he was he was a star governor in Florida, right? Everyone wanted to move to Florida. He was pushing back against the COVID regime part. I mean, he didn't hire Anthony Fauci. He didn't fund Operation Warp Speed, and yet you'd think on paper he would be the man.
Yeah, you'd think. I think this comes down to, well, I disagree a lot. But believe it or not, I disagree a lot more with the state's political structure than with ours. Based on, it's literally just a popularity contest, and I think that's what this comes down to. DeSantis polls poorly in Florida. Guess who's not polling poorly? It's Trump, and Trump is polling incredible right now. And I'm willing to bet a lot of that is due to exposure and headlines, right? Like, this guy's all over the news all the time, and every right wing was on the verge of extreme is now for sure extreme right wing because of the current events given the Biden administration, and I think people are getting pushed to that, and I think DeSantis sees that too.
But what is the appeal in Trump, you think? Is it just exposure? I mean, it sounds like his rhetoric is amazing, right? He's entertainment value, sticking it to the leftists, being a bully to the leftists. I mean, he hits all the right emotional notes and tugs at the old heartstrings and the vengeance, I guess. But his policies seem like shit, right? I mean, he banned bump stocks. He supported Fauci. Like, why would he keep Fauci in his administration and give him a fucking medal? Why do you fund Operation Warp Speed? Why did he bring in, like, he brings the worst establishment swamp creatures like John Bolton into his administration. And but I guess Americans just don't give a shit about policy. They care more about the words.
I would argue that, yeah, I mean, it sounds bad, but a lot of Americans aren't even looking into policy.
Yeah. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy thought had the best policies out of the Republicans I saw. He had a clear plan and had all the legal justifications mapped out on how he was going to downsize the federal government by 75%. He was going to like eliminate all these jobs, all these bureaucracies. He said he was going to make Javi Milei look like a moderate, and Javi Milei is like, I mean, he's basically an anarchist like me. And he had a clear plan to do it, but he didn't do so hot in the polls. Like Americans, it seemed like don't want a clear path to small government. They just want to stick it to the left or something like that.
Well, and like we talked a little bit before, a big issue. Like I am pro democracy. Don't get me wrong. But
for now,
there is significant problems, and like we talked about earlier, the fact that people are voting one way to stop their opposition rather than voting one way to promote their ideals is a big problem. And I think there's a lot of it in the state, if not more.
Sure.
Like that's what I strongly believe that's partially how women got in the first place, because there's so many lefties who were so upset with Trump and being a bully and being a typical American right wing. He's the epitome of American right wing bully, right? Like he is.
Yeah.
Right? And it's that pushed a lot of people to go to the left, and then you're in this irreversible cycle of
right
one way back and reverse when you voted the last election.
Yeah, I mean the left grew under Donald Trump, right? It got strong, it got more powerful, they got more radicalized. There were more leftists created under Trump for the same reason that there's more right wing, like extremists on both sides are growing in number because politics is a zero-sum game and people are against each other rather than for some kind of value to vote for. That could be in part, the system of first past the post where you have to get 50% or more in democracies where there is proportional representation, where your vote actually counts for something. Where, look, if you're a candidate, if your party only gets 8%, well, you get 8% of the seats, rather than right now in Canada, if your party gets 8%, you don't get jack squat, right? And so if you're actually getting your voice being represented in Parliament, now those kind of democracies are actually vote in favor of their values rather than against their worst nightmare, which is exactly what's happening west here. So maybe that has something to do with one. On the plus side, I will say Vivek Ramaswamy is now supporting Trump. And what did he say? He was talking to Trump at length about he was talking to him about central bank digital currency. Now, Trump hasn't said word one about this issue, CBDCs, right? And then the next day, he comes out in a speech talking about how these CBDCs, have you heard about these? I've just heard about them. And Vivek Ramaswamy had literally just talked to him the day before about that in the back room. So I hope that, I mean, that's the problem. Trump is good with words, good at getting popularity, but he needs to surround himself with the right people. And I think if he surrounds himself with the right people, if guys like Vivek and some of these anti-state guys, he could actually be a decent president, but he fucking keeps surrounding himself with the worst of the worst.
He shoots himself in the foot a lot, for sure.
Yeah.
He's all talk. Well, like I shouldn't say he's all talk, but all his popularity comes from basically just his rants and him being a meme most of his presidency, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see what we got next here. Oh, okay. Final batch of Jeffrey Epstein documents publicly released, listing big names. Sex trafficking victim Virginia Guthrie. Virginia Guthrie says Epstein paid her $15,000 to have sex with Britain's Prince Andrew. Wow.
I mean, I'd take it.
Yeah. I'd have sex with him for 15 grand.
15 grand.
Yeah. What do we want to say about this list? Is there any huge revelations coming out of there? We all knew Prince Andrew was a creep. The biggest surprise was probably Stephen Hawking. I mean, fucking way to go, bud.
Hey, gotta give me props, I suppose.
How the hell did that happen?
I don't know. from what I've heard,
Hello, get your sweet ass over here.
yeah, yeah. From what I've heard, a lot of like this wasn't necessarily uh like full on sexual assault or harassment, or like a lot of well, it was, but it wasn't like stereotypical. Like I heard one story, I forget who it was. It might have been Hawking, where there was somebody else where they had like little people or midgets, and he would just sit there and make them do math, and he'd give them like really,
I heard that too. Stephen Hawking
yeah,
like midgets doing math.
and he'd just sit there and just like
naked math,
get horny on midgets doing math, and I mean like. Yeah, I mean, again, 15 grand is 15 grand. If you want to watch me fail at calculus
right,
for 15K, like I'll take you up on it. I mean, the whole island as a whole, obviously, it's gained a lot of popularity since the trials and the Epstein Netflix
a lot of
series.
people going there for holidays.
And yeah, it's a crazy destination. I mean, there's so many leaked lists too. Like
my buddy Jeff Berwick and Luke Radowski actually snuck onto the island. They got video of filming the island until security chased them.
was Hawking there?
No, this was way past. The island's basically a ghost town now. But yeah, I mean, it strikes me as I mean, the guy was a multimillionaire. How? Obviously, off extorting people.
Well,
and having dirt on them, right?
He was intelligence is one of the conspiracies. That's why he never made it to trial. Why would you let somebody go to trial when you know that got that much dirt on you?
Says a lot about the intelligence agencies, doesn't it?
Well, what's the intelligence award for journalists? And it's just like if you're good enough journalist, the CIA will assassinate you. And that's just how you know you made it.
Yeah, I guess so. Hey, I guess that's why no journalists are getting assassinated anymore. There's no good ones out there.
Nobody's doing the legwork.
All right, moving on to something a little lighter than pedophile islands and sex trafficking. Ryan Gosling, while deserving, got an Oscar nomination for Barbie, while Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie didn't. Completely proving the point of the movie in 2024. You cannot make this up. What are your thoughts on that? Did you see Barbie?
I did watch Barbie. Actually, we watched Barbie on Christmas Day at work.
No way. And what was the takeaway?
I mean, the movie was. I mean, everybody's giving it a lot of props. I personally didn't care for the movie. It wasn't anything to do with ideals or any of that. It's just like I didn't agree with the production value. It seemed like it was plastic and made from nothing. Like a Barbie piece, as far as they got with her shooting Barbie. I just loved the movie, but a lot. Like I saw that Ryan Gosling's song "I'm Just Ken."
Right.
I thought it was all satire and parody, and now he's winning the Grammy for it. I think that is like a little bit of like a revolt against feminism at this point. It's like I've watched this, and I mean, yeah, it's pretty funny to me. The movie itself is not great, but I do find it hilarious that it's a feminist movie
that none of the women got nominations for. Well, maybe let's look at the alternative. It could just be that there were so many great female actresses this year. There's just a huge surplus of them, and there wasn't very many male roles out there that Gosling got it. He was enough, right? I don't know. I watched the movie too, and I didn't really get it. I thought it was kind of dumb. Yeah.
I was having trouble following it a little bit, honestly. I didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were trying to get at like a comedy angle, but it just wasn't that funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there wasn't a lot of great movies last year in general, so I find it hard to believe that there was.
All right. Well, I'm outraged that the women in Barbie didn't get it. There's something extremely funny about that, though. Oh, look at this. We have transgender golfer wins Women's Classic in Florida, increasing his chances to move on to the LPGA qualifier.
Look at that backswing.
Yeah, I mean,
this chick's a beast.
Yeah. Is golf one of those sports where, I mean, it seems like, I don't know, I haven't done much golfing, but why can't men and women compete in the same
I mean,
Or is it,
I would agree. I would argue that it's the same as every other sport where there is physiological differences. I mean, I
yeah.
started golfing 2 years ago. I'm not good at it. I don't claim to be good at it. But I've golfed with girls who are significantly better than me at golf. Like technique wise, they shoot lower. But if you put us on the same tee, like I'm out driving most girls by probably close to 100 yards.
Oh yeah, you're a beast.
If like if there's just simple physiological differences that would give them advantages, and I would probably say most of the short game is
Well,
a lot
maybe you
more.
should try out for the LPGA too.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Maybe, hey, maybe I make it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Why do we have women's sports, anyways? Right?
I mean, actually, the women's the PWH or PHL or whatever it is, WPHL. The I can't remember the acronym, but like the women's professional hockey league. And it's actually like I was watching it, and I watched it to support it, and just like so I could get their numbers. And I started
Right.
watching it, and there's some talent there. Like there's some actual players who are like putting up crazy numbers. They're hitting, they're like getting in each other's faces. It's actually entertaining to watch. So that was refreshing. I was kind of
Yeah.
be a little bit of a bust, like that was NBA to me,
Right.
but they've got some superstar talent. They're promoting their talent well, and I'm excited to see how that league does going forward.
Yeah, there's I for some reason I do enjoy watching women's hockey as well, like at a high level. And I think part of it is to do with the guys are so fast, and there's so much there's not much space between them.
Yeah, they don't have much ice.
So they're always like checking, and but with it seems like a much more skill game. Like there's a lot of passing, a lot of puck movement. They're a little bit slower, so there seems like there's more room on the ice. It would be like increasing the size of like an NHL rink for the guys by say 25-30%.
Well, that's what the Olympics were so popular when the NHL guys were going. You're
Right.
just increasing the size of the
Yeah,
surface.
hey, it's the increased size. It just
Yeah.
seems
Well,
the
guys like Connor McDavid who are fast in space or fast in tight are very few and far between. But there's
Right.
lots of guys who if you give them 6 feet,
Yeah,
they're gonna make you look silly. And if you give everybody that 6 feet, you're creating a lot more opportunity for big plays.
that's fair. Yeah.
I mean, like my sisters played hockey growing up, and we'd go to their camps, and they every camp would put on the same presentation, and it was always just like women's hockey is more skilled than men's hockey because we're not allowed to hit, and I always thought it was just such trash. But then you send like uh, who was it, a coin? You send her to the NHL All Star game, and she wins the accuracy contest, right? So there is some merit to it. They do have to be a little bit more skilled because they can't just use they're not just a bunch of grown men out there bullying each other. So yeah, I mean, like I said, finesse and patience is definitely a female attribute that most men don't get.
Okay. So I guess women's sport is valid.
Not very good.
And so we should probably keep guys out of it, right?
I just think it's funny that their whole movement's falling apart because they're just letting guys in. I mean, should have seen that coming from a mile away.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at this. This was in Canada. Let's. Oh, there you go.
Look at the comments on that.
Seems like the UFC fans are not Trudeau fans. This warms my heart. Yeah.
And
Amazing atmosphere, right? So good. Trying to bring out the guillotine.
yeah, Jonesy made an appearance. I mean, I don't know what chanting. I mean, fuck Trudeau anywhere.
Well, do you think those
Pretty
people are
polarizing.
voting conservative because they love PP or because they hate Trudeau?
Oh, easy answer here,
Yeah. I
obviously.
mean, I don't know who Angus Reid is polling, but it's not those people apparently.
I mean, if you just looked at the overall demographic, I would say most of these people are not intoxicated at that event and are definitely not engaging in a hive mentality.
Right. All right. One last thing here that I just wanted to share with you. See what your thoughts are on this. Let's see. Where is it now? No, not that one. Oh, there it is. See if I can play this.
Phil, what we'll discover at the scene is that the child has been dragged underneath the vehicle and remained conscious the whole time. She'll ask, "Am I going to die?" You'll need to assure her she won't. Attention. We have a collision involving a child approximately 5 years old. Eastbound Lansdowne at Monaghan, requesting immediate response. Phil, what you'll discover at the scene is that the child has been dragged underneath
Good idea.
Yeah,
remained conscious the whole time.
it's a heartwarming story.
Well, okay. The reason I brought it up is I don't know, something about it irked me. It rubbed me the wrong way. I just don't buy that firefighters are killing themselves because of the shit they see on the job. Like,
I mean, I am with you there. I mean, it's just like obviously everybody goes to those calls that stick with you, but I don't know. I personally haven't experienced the level of traumatic stress that clearly some people go through, and I can't really relate. Is probably
yeah,
part of it.
maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just being an asshole here that can't really relate. I mean, look, I've been on tough calls. I've had to go to counseling. I've had post traumatic stress from pediatric calls for sure. A never ever wanted to kill myself because of that. Like there's been times in my life where I wanted to, or I've thought about killing myself, but it's never been because the job, because something haunts me from the job. Right?
Yeah.
It's always been something going on in my personal life. I can't get my shit together. So what do you think? I just want to get your take on what is it? Because certainly there are a lot of firefighters that kill themselves, and it's happened in our workplace. It's happened. I mean, just in the past 5 years, I can think of about 5 guys locally here, firefighters that have killed themselves, and it's absolutely horrific. And I guess my concern is that because I've heard this at their funerals too, that this job, I think we need more mental health support, and this job is like wearing guys down and killing them. But what if it's not the calls that were going on that are killing us, and it's something else? I mean, it's convenient to point to the gruesome shit we see and say that's the problem, and we need,
I think that for sure, it's your personal life has a huge factor on your mental health at work. I mean, if you're going to work, I can't speak to it because I don't have kids. I'm not in a significant relationship that would cause me any extra stress, right? It was, uh, if you're dealing with those levels of stress from external factors, then you're going to work tired, where you're dealing with other problems, then maybe you're not preparing your brain mentally to deal with those calls. But then again, like you said, that's not the call that's causing that. That's something else, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, how can I put this? This is always a very tricky issue, right? And I'm not trying to offend anyone. I might be totally off here. My concern is if we're looking in the wrong direction, if we're putting resources in the wrong direction, it's almost like we're inculcating firefighters with this fragile mentality that is leading to tragedy. And part of it is we society in general and our own culture builds firefighters up to be these larger than life characters who are heroic, who know exactly what to do in an emergency, who risk life over limb. And a lot of that is true, but also we're just regular people. And a lot of times I think firefighters struggle with the gap they see between who a firefighter is in their mind and what society and culture expects them to be, and who they know they actually are.
Yeah, well,
actually a dirtbag who has like filthy thoughts and is like doing this for a paycheck and is like maybe not as upstanding and quality a guy as everyone makes me out to be. In other words, I'm just a normal person,
yeah.
and yet I should be this person, right? And I'm falling short.
I mean, as like I'm newish, right? Like my first firefighting job was in 2019, so it's interesting that this comes up. I was thinking not too long ago that it seemed like there's so much talk about mental health and suicide that when I first started, that it was almost I almost expected to have PTSD,
Right.
and I was like kind of fabricating it in my own mind.
Yeah.
And like obviously everybody needs to talk. You need to talk about your problems. Like you said, you've been to counseling. I've been to counseling, even though I don't think I've been to college significant enough to cause that kind of trauma on my brain. You do need to talk about it, and you keep those trauma levels down by talking about it. But there is a point where you're talking about it just to talk about it, and that you're instilling this in the minds of so many people who haven't had that excuse. Now,
Right.
almost exposing them to stress, like post-traumatic stress or traumatic stress prior to the event. And then when the event comes, like I would go to college in my first practice and I would be like, oh, this college gonna fuck me up. And that, like, as I've like gotten more experience, like I look back at those times and like, wow, like what was I thinking, right?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to see like the suicide rate is obviously super high. I'd be curious to see the suicide rate in like volunteers, because we're at an advantage there where we are exposed to those mental health support, and we're trying to use that. Sure, the volunteer training to a specific standard, but they're coming from like their family,
Right.
They're coming from their
They're getting thrown into
job, and they're going to whatever pediatric collar fire.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've come across a couple of accidents off duty just by surprise out of the blue driving, and like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And your heart starts racing. You're like, oh fuck. Okay, I don't have my equipment. What do I do? You know?
Yeah.
It's much more. It's much more. I don't want to say traumatizing, but it elevates your anxiety a lot more than.
It's not a controlled environment.
You know the steps. You have all the equipment. You've done this 100 times. So definitely, I can see something there. But I think something you hit on was very important. I had a very similar experience with expecting to have poor mental health. And in fact, if I didn't have poor mental health, there's something wrong with it. Like, I'm not a proper emergency worker if I'm not being oppressed and haunted by these calls.
Yeah.
Right. And so now, again, you're falling short of that standard. Right. And so you work yourself up. And I remember going to the very traumatic calls early in my career before the advent of mental health supports. And, it was my partners that helped me through it. It was like, hey, kid, that was a tough call. You know what? You had to take a couple beats, get yourself together, but you dealt with it. And that's normal. What you did was awesome. You confronted your thing, you dealt with it. You got shit done, and you provided value on that call. And there was really dark humor afterwards, right? And they explained this is a way of us clinically detaching, right? It's like, okay, this is our job. It's our job. We can look at it through an objective, detached lens. We don't have to look at it as ultra serious, and we can go home to our family and leave that behind. And it was awesome after a few calls with these guys who, basically, talked me through a few of those traumatic calls. I felt awesome. And I couldn't wait for more traumatic calls, right?
Yeah.
But then up to a couple of years later, when critical incident stress is introduced, and after a serious call, I'm looking around at my colleagues, and it was like a funeral home, and my excitement over the call and how we dealt with it, and how we confronted everything and the chaos and fucking made things good. That was the wrong attitude to bring into that meeting, and I realized. And so it was after that point when I started having PTSD. And so I guess my point is, I believe in the Stoic philosophers who say it's not the external world that causes us trauma, it's our own thoughts that cause us trauma. So it's my thoughts about the event that are causing the trauma, not the events themselves that are causing the trauma. And the way and so I have to wonder if in the era where we see more mental health resources thrown at us than ever, more resources to handle calls and traumatic calls in general are at an all-time high. We also see mental health issues at an all-time high. We have to wonder if that fragile mentality of you are being oppressed by your environment. You're constantly being oppressed by your environment. You, young Jared, are being oppressed by your environment. Isn't the actual root cause of a lot of mental health issues in our profession.
I mean, like, and it's different for everybody too.
Sure.
Everybody's got their own trigger points and everything. Like I was working with a friend and we went to a call, and it was like for me a routine call and didn't think anything of it. And he came up to me like 2-3 weeks later and he's like, "Hey man, I just wanted to talk to you like about that call. Like I was really worked up and you were super calm, and that just like helped me get through it." And then like I look back and I couldn't even remember the call. It was like this call to me was just like so run of the mill that it wasn't even an issue. But we got this new guy who's so primed and ready to be traumatized that he was already traumatized at a call that was just
right. And then, but notice too that what helped him was you remaining calm and seeing how you controlled yourself and how you looked at the call. It wasn't going to a critical incident stress debrief or something like that where he would re-traumatize himself with his horrible thoughts of the call. It was like, you know, and that's what I worry about now is those old veterans who would take you aside and say, look, that was rough, and make a dark joke about it. And look, you handled it. It was tough. You handled it, and you feel good about that.
Yeah.
And we're going to do the same on the next call, right? These guys are like experiencing triggering calls, and instead of having someone there to mentor them, in fact, the way those veterans mentored me would be grounds for hauling before HR for discipline. Nowadays. And so, anyways, just some food for thought about
mental health
stuff. And that's what rubbed me the wrong way about that video is you're saying that this call is the cause of suicide, right? These types of calls are the cause of suicide. No, what if it's the way you guys are telling us to think about those calls that is the cause of suicide? What if it's the way you guys are portraying firefighters and setting up this impossible to meet standard, and we always fall short, and is setting us up for suicide? What if it's that?
That's psychology too. If you go to a comedy show, they could say it like I'm a believer. A lot of jokes at a comedy show aren't even that funny, but because you're in the environment, it's funny. Like if you hear that out of context, you're probably not gonna laugh a lot of the time.
Right.
And it's the same sort of scenario.
Yeah, the framing that the environment sets up helps set up you up, right?
So you surround everybody with all these fixes for a problem that doesn't exist yet. I mean,
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
It's a problem, and you know, and you not only that, you villainize people like those old veterans who actually help you improve your mental health when you see traumatic calls. Like I experienced post-traumatic growth because of those guys and their mindset and the way they brought it to the calls. And you villainize that, you make that almost like taboo in the fire service, and then you flip around and tell everyone they're super fragile and their calls and their job are going to oppress them.
Yeah.
And of course you see mental health. Anyways, listen, we've been going for how long? Just over an hour. I think that's a good place to end. Guys, let me know, how did young Jared do? Should I keep him on as a co-host or not?
Don't hold back.
I think it went fairly well. We got to set a comedy date in Edmonton. So if you're in the Edmonton area and you want to see young Jared and I perform at an open mic and boo us, heckle us, whatever you want to do, put the pressure on, make fun of us,
We'll need a plan.
or laugh hysterically because we came up with good material miraculously our first time out. Maybe that'll happen, probably not. But,
Young Jared and DJ Freedom coming into the stage.
all right, guys, that's it. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you hit subscribe, share with your friends, and hey, if you could do me a favor and rate the show if you're watching on or listening on Spotify or Apple iTunes, I'd appreciate that. It'll only take a few seconds, but it'll help me greatly. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.